Talk about low-budget flights, no food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, you viewers, to another video. Alright, so you might be wondering, why is there a picture of the guy, the Games Cage guy? As I'm sure all you my big hardcore Sonic fans in my audience probably know who he is. So the reason there's an image of him here is because he just did a video where he went over this question someone asked, which is, if you could make one change to each Sonic game, what would it be? I thought this was an interesting video. So I thought, instead of just doing one change, what just changes in general would I make to each Sonic game? I'm only covering Mainline because if we cover the spin-offs, we'd be here forever. Also, yes, even though I am doing more than one change per each game, I'm not gonna fully say what I do to remake them because, yeah, these are changes, not. I'm not asking for here's how I'd remake Sonic Lost World. Okay, so remember to all check out my letterboxd, linked in the description. Without further ado, let's dive on in. Alright, so the classic games will just group in one this time. So the video Games Cage did, he said that the only changes he'd really want to make to these games were done with a lot of the ports, and I'd have to agree. Sonic 1 needed a spin dash, so they added the spin dash in Sonic Origins and some other mobile ports. Or widescreen, yeah, we got widescreen. I mean, yeah, people have complained about Sonic Origins and its quality, but at the end of the day, it's still a decent enough port. I mean, as some people said, a lot of the issues with Sonic Origins are only really something you're going to notice if you've played these games a million times. Which, yeah, a lot of hardcore Sonic fans have played these games a million times, but the average person, which will be most of the people who buy Origins, I'd assume, will not notice these issues. But yeah, there aren't really any things I'd change about the classic games other than, yeah, I don't know, maybe you could make some of the levels better. I mean, did they really need Act 3 of Scrap Brain Zone and Sonic 1 to be more Labyrinth Zone? I mean, I know it is a good example of, how much it really makes you want to beat Eggman, so it's so satisfying when you finally do. Maybe they could just cut down, Labyrinth Zone to 2-act instead of 3. I think that'd be a good choice. But other than that, for Sonic 2, maybe make the Death Egg boss fight a little easier. Like, how about instead of having no ring, give at least something like 2 rings? Because you still have, no save states back on the Genesis back in the day, so, that'd be really handy. Yeah, that's all I gotta say about the classic games. Alright, Sonic Adventure. Big the Cat. He needs to be changed. I'm not going to say you need to completely remove him because then this will be a very different game. But what they should have done is they should have made his levels something like, I don't know, Big hits enemies with a fishing rod and then at the end of a level he finds Froggy. Sure, that would probably be a little dull, but I would much rather have that than the absolute horror that is trying to play Big the Cat's campaign. I've heard some people say, but once you learn the controls, Big's levels aren't that hard. No, I know how to. I've looked at the control menus and manuals and guides 100 times, and it still took me forever to beat Big the Cat's campaign. I don't know what Sega was thinking when they decided to include him. Okay, yeah, I know why. He's a glorified tech demo, but still. Wasn't the rest of the game, enough of a tech demo? I mean, they said the big deal was the Dreamcast had impressive water graphics for 1998, but you already have Chaos. Do you need more water? Other than that, I don't know. I guess maybe the sound mixing could be better. That's really more of an issue with SA2. Yeah, other than changing Big the Cat, I don't really have too many things to say I'd want to change about Sonic Adventure without completely remaking it. Sonic Adventure 2, my favorite Sonic game. And yeah, as much as I love SA2, in fact, I just replayed it. Like I said before about SA1, maybe you could change up the sound mixing, that's more of an issue with SA2, because, yeah. SA2's, the sound is not good. I I remember seeing these videos that are just audio clips of, say, Ryan Drummond as Sonic or David Humphrey as Shadow, all their voice lines, and all the music, all the sound effects, it's all gone. And the comments of those videos say, when I'm only listening to just the voices, not all the added effects, they sound much better. And that's true because, yeah, I'm sure we've all talked about it at this point, but in SA2, the characters are constantly cutting each other off. Sometimes this is okay, but other times it is not, and it just is kind of distracting. Also, there are just certain cutscenes where the music is really loud. Why is it so loud in the scene where right before Sonic and Shadow have their big race? You're trying to listen to this iconic scene of the whole, what you see is what you get, just a guy that loves adventure. But while you're trying to listen to that, you're also hearing, boom, boom! It is really ridiculously loud. And also, when it comes to the actual gameplay, people always complain about Knuckles' Emerald radar, and they say it should function like the SA1 radar. And while I would agree with that, I never found this to be too big an issue because I played this game multiple times, the main campaign, and never once did I ever find two emeralds that were in a similar location. Okay, maybe a couple times, but like I understand people's frustration with it, and yeah, I'd agree it could be changed, but it's not a huge deal for me. So yeah, SA2, unless I were remaking it, there isn't really much I would change at all. Sonic Heroes. Oh boy, what do I say about Sonic Heroes? I know this game is supposed to get a remake at some point. It was announced something like a year ago, and we have heard absolutely nothing on it since then. But anyway, so what would I change? First things first is Team Chaotix. Now, and I wouldn't say you completely change their gameplay, but I would say this. On Jay's review of Sonic Heroes, he said that, look at Team Chaotix's first level. The objective is collect 10 hermit crabs. For every other level they do, though, it's destroy all 100 enemies. Blow out all 60 torches. For the first level, there are more than 10 hermit crabs. They're probably, I don't know, 25, let's say, just a random number. But it's only asking you to collect 10. For the other levels, it asks you to collect every single collectible in the entire level, and that could take forever. There's a reason people hate playing through their campaign so much. If we're shortened to, collect, there's, say, 100 enemies, and it said destroy 60 enemies, people would have far less of a bad time with Team Chaotix's levels. Also, you could, maybe make the game, I know this is a pretty big change, but maybe you could have it just be one campaign, like one continuous campaign so you don't have to play the whole game 4 times. Some characters play some levels, okay, maybe you'd repeat some levels, but for the most part, there are 14 levels in the game, technically 7, and there are 4 teams, so let's say they each get to play a couple of them, and when they interact and stuff like that, it feels more natural because you have more context of what's going on. I don't know, because, yeah, I think one of the reasons I like SA2 so much is that they significantly streamline the whole multiple stories angle. Instead of being play 6 different campaigns and then the final campaign, it's play 2 and then a final. This game is play 4 campaigns and then a final. I think that is a bit excessive. Also, people always complain about this game's controls. Yeah, I guess you could tighten those up, but I don't think this game controls quite as poorly as a lot of people say. Shadow the Hedgehog. Okay, before I talk about this game, I have to say that this wallpaper I actually made myself. In fact, a couple of the following wallpapers are ones I made myself while working on this video. Yes, none of the art is from me. I just took this picture and slapped the Shadow the Hedgehog logo on it. But I still like it and think it's cool. Anyway, so viewers of this channel, you might know that I really hate Shadow the Hedgehog, the game, not the character. I really will never understand why nowadays there are people who are saying, oh, come on, it was actually kind of good, guys. This game was a disaster. I don't think Sonic 06 would have been as poorly received if this game weren't so awful. This began the dark age of Sonic. I know a lot of people would agree with that. Because probably the biggest thing I would complain about this game, aside from the abysmal writing, is the fact that you must play it 10 times and then you unlock the final story. Like, Who came up with that? Because everyone says it's a whole choose your morality, which I think is a dumb thing they should just not include in a Sonic game. But it's are you hero, dark, or neutral? So why not just have 3 campaigns as opposed to 10? And there's something like 324 different ways you can beat Shadow the Hedgehog. There's an entire video about it. And Sonic Team went out of their way to name every single one of them. Boy, imagine if they spent that time developing the game and polishing it up more instead of naming 326 unique campaigns that barely have any differences. Oh, also, to get each of the 10 endings, you have to play things in a slightly different way. And if you mess one thing up, boom, you didn't get that new ending you haven't seen yet. What a waste. This should have just been one campaign, a game with one campaign about Team Dark. It was a huge missed opportunity this game didn't get to be about Team Dark. And I wouldn't ditch the motorcycle because the motorcycle is cool, but Shadow does not have a gun. That was so stupid. Now, people might say, well, if you don't think Shadow should have a gun, then aren't you saying Sonic shouldn't have a sword either? No, because it's not the same thing. When Sonic got a sword for one game, that was a gimmick of a fantasy game about knights. Why not give him a sword? It looks cool. But giving Shadow a gun was just clearly done to be edgy. I mean, this game is only even as dark and gritty as it is because games of that nature were popular around the mid 2000s. So, Sega had to cash in on that trend. But yeah, this should have just been a one campaign game about Team Dark. Even the story itself doesn't need to be that changed, it just needs to be seriously polished up. We're not going to get dumb Shadow cursing nonstop. I hate that so much. We're not going to have random endings of Shadow killing Eggman. What is this game? This was such a disappointment. But yeah, I change it like that. Make it a single campaign game, focus on Team Dark, ditch the guns, ditch the swearing, but you can keep the black arms. Sonic 06, but this is also another wallpaper I made. Pretty cool, huh? So, GamesCage said in his video about one change he makes to each Sonic game, he simply just said for 06, finish the game. And yeah, I gotta agree, because I think most people have the same opinion about 06 these days, which is that 06 is pretty bad, but it's only bad because it wasn't finished. Because some of what is in there is really good. As Project 06 shows that the levels in this game are really well designed. The problem isn't the level design. The problem is that the game just controls so poorly. It also is a serious case of same button syndrome. People complain about Sonic Adventure 2 being guilty of that, and well, it is. I never found that to be a huge issue, but for Sonic 06, it's pretty bad. Also, the game does not have autosave. Why doesn't this game have autosave? SA1 did. So why doesn't this next generation 2006 Xbox 360 game not have it? But the Dreamcast does. I think even Sonic CD might have, because it was on the Sega CD, I'm not sure. Other than though, just, finish the gameplay, polish it up, make the characters faster. The story is something that we'd be here all day for. But I'm just going to give a few notes on that, which is, okay, one, we are ditching the romance. I think we all agree on that. No. Sonic and Elise, that was just horrible. We all hate that for a reason. They could have made it something just like, I don't know, Sonic helps this girl who is sad and sheltered, feel free or something. That would have been a nice enough story. But they had to throw in that super weird, creepy romance that everyone hates very much and will forever mar the legacy of this game. I mean, even though the opinion, the consensus on Sonic 06 has changed a bit in the game's favor over the past few years, people still hate that scene, and that's something that's never gonna go away. Also, maybe you could make the humans less realistic. I'm not saying necessarily make him look like Eggman. I mean, I think the humans in Unleashed look pretty good. Maybe do a style like that, but maybe you could have them look the way they do in SA1. I think that'd be the best idea. I mean, that's kind of how the humans look in Shadow Generation. They look kind of anime-esque. Because it makes the Mobians fit in with them better, because they all look kind of cartoony. Other things for the story I'd change, I don't know, maybe make some of the characters playable in more levels. I mean, Blaze is supposed to be Silver's companion and all that, his best friend, girlfriend. But anyway, why is she not playable in Silver's final stage? I mean, you'd think she would. She is in Project 06. I mean, okay. I think the development time for that fact was actually I think the rush development time of this game shows something interesting, which is that in Sonic's final level, you gotta switch between Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. In Shadows, you gotta switch between Shadow and Omega. In Silver's, you just gotta play as Silver. I think it shows that Sega was running out of time. I thought, okay, we're gonna play as all of Team Sonic for the final level of that campaign, but for Team Dark's campaign, just don't play as Rouge, just play Shadow, just play as Omega, and then of course Shadow. Silver's campaign, oh my gosh, we have a day left to make this game. Just remove Blaze, just make it Silver. I would not be surprised if that is what happened. I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm not the first person to say that. Other things for the story, I guess, make the cutscenes not look awful because the CGI cutscenes look great, but the regular cutscenes look. I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that SA2 had better cutscenes. And ignoring my bias, I still think SA2 had better cutscenes because at least those looked good for the time. But even for the time, 06's in-game cutscenes just look pretty bad. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about Sonic 06 without going hyper in detail for how the changes I'd make. Sonic and the Secret Rings. This is two simple things. One, ditch the motion controls. As people have said using emulators and stuff like that, playing this game on a controller makes it far better. And yeah, because you know what? I think there's an argument to be made that this is the worst mainline Sonic game simply because of how poorly it controls. I remember this one YouTuber put his list of worst video games he's ever played, and he said, this game taught me what motion sickness is. Also, the game is just really poorly presented, like which missions you have to do, which ones are optional. All that stuff is just really messy, makes you end up playing a bunch of stuff you don't even need to. And considering how badly the game is designed, that's surely not fun. Sonic Unleashed. This is also another wallpaper I made myself. So, Unleashed. Just ditch the metal collecting, please. Okay. When I played Unleashed for the first time last year or a year earlier, I don't know, it took me a long time to beat it. I knew I had to collect medals, I knew where some of them were, but I think it was right before Jungle Joyride Day, the last stage before Eggman Land, it said, you need to collect 20 more medals. So I did, and it was really annoying, and it took a really long time. This game is already pretty long and pretty difficult. Making this ridiculous medal requirement that the game doesn't even directly tell you about is not going to be good for first-time players, for casual Sonic fans. Also, we could, I don't know, maybe make the Werehog stages shorter. Because look, I don't mind the concept of the Werehog. I think it's a cool one-game gimmick, but his levels do take a long time. That's just true. Also, you could ditch Tornado Defense. It only appears twice, so it really feels like filler. And, well, the first Tornado Defense isn't that bad. For some reason, when I had to play the second act of Tornado Defense, I hated it. It took me so long to beat. I don't know why. I mean, I know I'm not the best at video games, but that was still really hard, and it was really pointless. Anything else? You could maybe make Eggman Land shorter. I know people like it because it's a huge gauntlet, but even if you did make it shorter, it would still be really long. I mean, it took me so long to beat Eggman Land that it didn't even tell me how long. I think it's if you take over an hour for a level, it just doesn't tell you. So, well, Unleashed is still a really solid game. Boy, it has some stuff holding it back. Oh, also, the final boss. Maybe you shouldn't make the Sonics, the sections where Sonic has to run with a time limit across the ruins. Maybe you can make the time limit more generous and maybe not make the stuff with the Light Colossus incredibly dull. Also, could we have an actual fight with Dark Gaia, please? People always talk about how epic the final boss of Unleashed is, but it only really is because of the music and graphics. But the actual final boss is not fun. It's just Super Sonic hits a bunch of dragon snake things in the head, and then you win. I just found that to be really boring. Sonic and the Black Knight. Much like Secret Rings has the issue of please get rid of the motion controls and use a real controller. I mean, this game just still does work a lot better than Secret Rings, but still. If it had a real controller, this game would be far better because we hardcore Sonic fans already hold Black Knight in pretty high acclaim because of the music and the story and the visuals, but I think regular or casual, I don't want to say regular, casual video game fans probably would hold Black Knight in much higher regard if it just played well. That's really the only complaint I have with Sonic and the Black Knight for how it could be changed. I mean, maybe you could also make some of the when you get to play as the Knights of the Round Table thing, maybe you could make them control a little better. I don't know. Also, it seems like the game has a lot of cut content because you have the whole multiplayer mode with Silver and Jet being included as playable characters. So I don't know. I guess there's some stuff there they could have added in. Although it's fun that it's not there. Well. Sonic Colors. Once again, another wallpaper I made myself. Okay, so Sonic Colors. Make the console version like the DS version. You know, I don't think people would be mad if we didn't get a DS version of this game if the console version were basically just that. As we've all joked a million times now, and it's not even really a joke, because let's be honest, it's true. This is not a 3D game with 2D sections, which, by the way, Unleashed should have had no 2D sections. This is a 2D game with 3D sections. Ha 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 ha, yes, but it's true. And each level isn't divided up into 2 acts or 3 acts. They're divided up into 6 acts. You can there are levels you finish where it seems like you only played half of it, and then yeah, the next act it looks like the second half of that level you just played. Maybe they could have just made each zone or have 3 acts, and maybe you could have 2 3D acts and then 1 2D act. Maybe we could take a bit more advantage of the boost and less of the use of the wisps, even though they are the main gimmick of the game. You could and well, the story still would be simple, much like the DS version. Actually include the other characters. It would also be nice to actually get to hear their voice actors, because so many of the voice actors from back then and the ones that were, and even the ones that we still have to this day, we don't really get to hear that much of. I mean, Silver was voiced by Quentin Flynn in Colors DS and Generations, but how many lines from him have we actually gotten to hear as his Silver? And then he got recast with Bryce Papenbrook, who, yeah, I do like more, but still, we barely got to hear any of Silver and Blaze's voices in this era, or Omega's. I don't know, that'd be nice, get to hear these characters and see him interact with Sonic and Tails. Because if this is supposed to be Dr. Eggman's Grand Interstellar Amusement Park that is open to the public, shouldn't there be some guests there? I don't know, that would make way more sense. Also, the DS version of a secret Supersonic final boss fight, put back in that Supersonic final boss fight. Maybe make the way to get the last Chaos Emerald easier, but still, yeah, include that. Sure, it wouldn't be a main part of the story. The story would wrap up when you defeat Eggman in his Nega Wisp armor, but still, they could have included that. It would be cool. Oh, yes, and get rid of the terrible writing. No more baldy nose hair, please. Sonic Generations. Also a wallpaper I made myself. So, Generations is weird because the gameplay is stellar. If we were just judging this game off of the gameplay, it'd be something like a 93 out of 100. But then you get to the last levels and the final boss. And you know, I don't think people would hate the final level as much as word for the fact that the final boss is even worse. I mean, okay, starting with Planet Wisp, why was that picked to be the last level of the game? I think they were originally going to plan to make some kind of Time Eater zone as the final level, kind of like Eggman Land, but that was cut for time. But I would have been fine with them not doing that if they just picked a better level from Colors. I would pick Tropical Resort, but it's only really for the music. I know it wouldn't actually be that fitting as a final level. So maybe you could pick something like Asteroid Coaster, Starlight Carnival. I'd pick one of those two. But Planet Wisp, what an anticlimactic ending. Anything else? Okay, so I think there's a lot. Oh, the final boss. Honestly, just make the final boss play like the 3DS version of the final boss, and maybe you could play a new Crush 40 song. I mean, this is the 20th anniversary Sonic game. We don't even get an original vocal song for this game. We just get to hear this generic final boss music. We have to listen to Sonic's friends not shutting up about. It looks like a homing shine. A time bomb will be restored, and it looks like a warping arm attack. That was so annoying, and there's no way to turn it off. Why not do what SA1 did and Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 06, where during the final boss, Sonic's friends are all cheering him on. Wouldn't that be nicer? Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe there'd be segments where there is no dialogue because you can focus on the music. Because yeah, use Sonic Youth by Crush 40 as the final boss theme. I'm pretty sure most people think that song was probably made 4 generations and then was cut, and Crush 40 had to release it themselves. That's my theory anyway. Also, well, I wouldn't say this game needs to have a super complicated story. It just needs to be more than what we actually got. I mean, the oh, the re-release, the remaster of Sonic Generations from last year had to put in new dialogue where Sonic talks to his friends after he saves them because he just doesn't in the original, which is kind of boring. Have real cutscenes where Sonic interacts with them. Have them say more than just one line of dialogue to him. And can we make classic Sonic speak, please? Get Jaleel White back to voice him. By the logic of he doesn't speak on the Genesis, then why do Eggman and classic Eggman and classic Tails speak? That doesn't make any sense with that logic. Anything else? Yeah. They should have. Why did they have to make classic Sonic light blue? I guess to distinguish himself from modern Sonic, but it just looks really ugly. I think they also could have made his. Yeah, well, yeah. I guess it's a fine enough classic design. Anything else? Maybe you could have more boss fights. How about instead of having one boss fight per era, you could have one boss fight or two boss fights per era. How about one boss fight per level? Maybe that'd be a bit too much because Sonic Team was also developing colors. How about you could maybe instead of including all those extra boss fights, you could just I don't know include a level for Sonic CD. I mean, you might have to ditch the whole 3 eras thing then, but I don't know. There's a lot you could do with Generations if you changed it up. Because great as this game is, it could have been better. Sonic Lost World. The simple answer for how to change Sonic Lost World is you make it so the game doesn't exist. Okay. In all seriousness, if we have to keep Sonic Lost World, just ditch the whole Mario-ified aesthetic of it. This game screams we are trying to rip off Mario. That is something that Takashi Iizuka literally admitted. He said, oh yeah, this game was made to appeal to Mario fans. Why? Also, I get it's because of the whole Wii U deal thing, which is a terrible idea, but maybe they shouldn't have made it so the new mainline Sonic game following generations was exclusive to a console no one bought. Okay, I know they didn't know the Wii U wouldn't be successful, but it was still a dumb idea. But yeah, removing the whole Mario-ified aesthetic of this game would already make it much better, but if you're gonna keep the Deadly Six, could they have different designs, please? Even if they're still written terribly, at least they wouldn't look like Mario rejects. Oh, this game is just so bad. But you know, this game also got rid of the whole you collect 100 rings and you get an extra life. This is the only Sonic game that had a life system to not include that. Why did they get rid of that? And why are the Wisps back? This game is a mess. I could also have a better story. Even though the story would still be lame, probably, at least we could please ditch the you trust Eggman more than me. You know how much that bites? Sonic forces. Sonic forces me to be disappointed, as some people have said. Ha 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 ha. Oh boy, Sonic Forces is such a disappointment. I think this is probably the most disappointing Sonic game. At least 06 had some good qualities. But this game is just... Oh man, this game is bad. And it's not bad for the same reasons. I mean, '06 was bad because it was super ambitious, didn't have nearly enough development time to fulfill that ambition. This game sounds ambitious, but it was literally made just to make money. Of course, all these games are made to make money, but the reason this game is so short and so lame is because Sega just needed something to make money after the losses they suffered from Lost World and Boom. And yeah, that sure tells you a lot about this game, doesn't it? I mean, we have a game that is about Eggman taking over the world. Sonic and his friends form the Freedom Fighters, I mean, the Resistance. Um, you get to play as your own original character. There's this epic war story of Sonic and the Freedom Fighters. I'm gonna call them the Freedom Fighters or whatever. You can't stop me. Against the Eggman Empire, and there's all these classic villains you get to fight, and there's this cool new villain. And then the game turns out to be this incredibly lame mess. Yeah, the game isn't glitchy, but it doesn't mean it's good. The levels are pathetically easy. Most of the music has been synthesized, which doesn't sound nearly as catchy as other Sonic music. Infinite, who has one of the coolest designs in the entire series, is a complete joke of a character. We have memed on him for 8 years for a reason. He is just so, for lack of a better word, edgy. All he does is just stand around and spout dark nonsense about how I'm going to crush you, and I am better than you, and I am not weak! Oh boy, I will never get tired of laughing at that. Can we ditch Episode Shadow? Cool as Episode Shadow is in concept, why is the backstory for the main villain saved for, okay, admittedly free, but still DLC nonetheless that you only unlock after you beat the game? What the heck is up with that? Also, Infinite's backstory is really inconsistent because in Episode Shadow, they have the whole backstory about how he was a mercenary, which is also in the Sonic Forces tie-in comics. But then in the actual game itself, it's implied that that Infinite is a robot? What? Also in the game, it says that the Phantom Ruby is something Eggman built, which I like more than just another magical gem. But yeah, in the tie-in comics, it's another magical gem, and it's one that Eggman literally found on his doorstep. What is up with this game? Ditch classic. Okay, at this point, I'm basically just trying to remake the entirety of Sonic Forces, but hey, it's my video. I can do what I want. Okay, ditch classic Sonic, please. Maybe you could add in some more characters. Put Blaze in here. Say that maybe the Freedom or the Resistance needed help, so they were able to call Blaze, and she came in from her dimension. She's here to help them out, and you can make the other characters playable, please. Maybe when Sonic is supposedly being tortured for 6 months, which I know it's a mistranslation, but he could look at least a little beat up when we find him. Instead, he just acts like nothing ever happened. He's still equipping as always. Also, if this is supposed to be Eggman has finally taken over the world, maybe Eggman could feel like a threat instead of just sitting around the Eggmobile until the final boss, where his plan is to drop the sun on the Earth. What would Eggman gain from dropping the sun on the Earth? Eggman wants to take over the world. How would literally blowing it to pieces do anything for him? He'd die too. This game's so bad. Also, Zaphox should not be in this game. Swap him out with Metal Sonic. Okay, I mean, not Metal Sonic, Mephiles. Okay, then we'd have the issue of, what about Shadow Generations, but here's the thing. I feel like if the Sonic Forces turned out better, we may never even have gotten Shadow Generations because there wouldn't be a need for it. Oh wait, never mind, because Shadow Generations only exists because of movie 3, but whatever. Okay, so, yeah, also, some people have suggested instead of having Phantom Ruby copies of the villains, why not have the actual villains? Shadow could be a double agent, you could bring back Mephiles and Metal Sonic. Yeah, do that. That'd be cool, I think. It might be a bit difficult to write, but it could be pretty simple. Mephiles has found his way back into the timeline. Even though no one remembers him, he remembers them. And Eggman is going to help him get revenge on those who defeated him. Metal Sonic wants to take over the world and become the one true Sonic? Well, hey, if he takes over the world and kills Sonic, then hey, he'll be the real Sonic now. Shadow would be a double agent. I don't know, why would he work for Eggman? Who knows? Uh, yeah. Sonic Forces, a huge disappointment. Sonic Frontiers. I made this wallpaper myself, by the way. Probably the one I'm most proud of. So, Sonic Frontiers is a weird game. I feel like it's already being affected by what I call the Sonic Colors effect, which is that it was released when the series was in a pretty bad spot. So when we had a game that was competent, everyone was saying, "Oh my gosh, this is the best Sonic game ever made!" And then a year or two, okay, Colors took a decade. This game, it took about 2 years for people to look back on it and say, that game was good, don't get me wrong, but boy, it really wasn't as good as I remember. I'd have to agree with that. I still really like Sonic Frontiers, flaws and all, but this game is rough. Did you know this game actually... Okay. Iizuka had to beg his higher-ups at Sega to give the game a whole extra year of development time. This game already looks like it was missing a whole year of development time, but it actually had to be... the developers actually had to beg for an extra one. I can't even imagine what this game would have looked like if it didn't get that extra year of development time. So, as flawed as Sonic Frontiers is gameplay-wise, with stuff like the pop-in and the not very interesting graphics, I still really enjoyed playing this game. Maybe you could do stuff like add the spin dash in from the get-go. I don't know. Maybe you could polish up some of the combat a bit, but what I think is the biggest disappointment with this game is the story. Because yes, we had the first Sonic game in 13 years to have a story, but not a particularly good one. So much of the game is just the characters standing around fields talking to each other. And that would be fine if if the cutscenes were animated well. Because some of them are animated fine, but most of them are just show barely any movement. And yeah, since there are barely any action scenes, it just feels like nothing happens. And people complain about the mischaracterization. I'd have to agree with that to an extent. On the one hand, I'm glad they ditched Amy is in love with Sonic, which okay, the series hasn't completely ditched that because it's definitely still there, but in this game it's just not there at all. And yeah, I agree Amy used to be annoying, but in this game she's just boring. I don't know. Maybe they could have kept it in but just downplayed it a bit. I don't know. Eggman should not be they should not try to make Eggman slightly sympathetic because he's Eggman. I think a way more interesting way to handle Eggman's story in this game would be, yeah, just like in the base game, Sage believes that Eggman is like her father because he built her. And while Eggman sees Sage as useful, to him that's just it. She's a useful assistant. He doesn't really see her as his daughter, so when she sacrifices herself at the end, it would be tragic because her final words are, "Look after father, Sonic." But when he would look at the sky at the end, he would just be saying something like, "Huh, that's just too bad. Guess I'll have to build another assistant, huh?" Okay, you might be thinking, well, you're just biased because Archie and Archie Eggman is the worst and is pure evil, but this is a guy, even in the games who tried to drop the sun on the world and threatened to blow up a country. He blew up half the moon, for crying out loud. You're telling me this guy isn't pure evil? Anything else? Maybe make some of the lore with the ancients a little more clear. I mean, Sonic, for as many references as this is in this game as are in this game, no one ever once says, "Hey, the ancients look just like Chaos." That's something you have to find out about in the egg memos. I found a lot of the egg memos, but it's something you have to go out of your way to find. It's not something that's in the game. Also, yeah, could we maybe not have nearly as many references? I'm fine with some of them, but stuff like, "Wow, that was on par with Dark Gaia, easy," is just really forced, and please ditch the Tangled reference. I do not need Tangle acknowledged in the games, please. Okay, Shadow Generations. Yeah, I made this wallpaper. Probably not the best one. Anyway, so Shadow Generations could be improved with two things: a better level selection of levels and a more in-depth story. Starting with the story, okay, one, I guess this also goes for Frontiers, but both these games have a prologue animation the fans all went crazy for. Even people who aren't too big into Sonic went crazy over them. Why aren't they in the game? Because especially Dark Beginnings for Shadow Generations, that's really important. And it's just not included in the game because sure, all I heard about it because I followed the Sonic news like a hawk, but just a random kid who gets this game for Christmas or something isn't going to know about isn't going to know about Dark Beginnings. It would add a lot of context. I mean, apparently it's included on the PS5 copy, but it's not included on the Xbox copy or the Switch copy or the Steam copy. Why? Why not? Also, yeah, as well animated as the cutscenes are in this game, as good as the dialogue and voice acting is, it just doesn't have that many cutscenes. When Shadow has to say goodbye to Maria at the end, I felt it, sure, but that's only because I'm a Sonic fan. I've played Sonic Adventure 2. I've read Archie. Of course I care about this scene, but someone who's just getting introduced to Shadow for the first time or learning about his backstory for the first time, when a kid sees this ending, he's not going to really care that much. He won't go beyond, I feel bad for Shadow because he lost his best friend. But but if the game had more scenes of his interactions with Maria and Gerald, like, the game sort of sets up this whole arc where Shadow is thinking, maybe I should use a Chaos Emerald, just use Chaos Control and stop time, and I can save them. But it doesn't come back up until the end. As someone suggested in his video, maybe you could have Gerald find out about this. Maybe Shadow would accidentally tell Gerald Maria, well, I have to protect you because you're going to die soon when you go back to your spot in time or whatever. And he would be thinking, maybe I really should save them. I have to save you guys. But Maria would tell him, Shadow, we can't, we're not meant to be here. You have to go save your friend, help your friends. And we'll always be together in your heart. Which, yeah, that scene is just ripped from Archie. In fact, I know they probably wouldn't be allowed to do this, but why didn't they just quote Archie in that scene? They couldn't have used the whole, we'll never be apart as long as I hold you in my heart, Maria. Goodbye. I mean, the dialogue we get is really good, but still. Also, couldn't they have had Maria at the end say Sayonara, Shadow the Hedgehog? I don't know. I think if they did that and made the story more in depth, I would have ended up crying. And could they have please used Without You during the credits? Everyone complained that they didn't do that. You go from this sad, emotional moment as Shadow runs away into the distance as Maria and Gerald fade away. Rouge is flying by his side, and then she sees a single tear fly out of his eye, and she catches it. And then the game ends. But instead of getting this sad song for the credits, you get this hyper exciting rock and roll song, which, yeah, it's a good song, but it's kind of tone deaf. And most Sonic games usually have some big dramatic song for the credits, so I'm surprised this one doesn't. As for the level select itself, level selection, okay, so we're doing 3 eras, 2 levels per era. I mean, because the actual game, the third era only had 1 level, so let's do this. First era, Radical Highway, Egg Fleet instead of Rail Canyon, and then the fight with the Bio Lizard. Era 2, we'd have, Kingdom Valley, no. Yeah, Westopolis from Shadow the Hedgehog, Kingdom Valley from Sonic 06, and then with a boss fight from Metal Overlord. And then for the third era, we'd have Sunset Heights from Shadow Generation or from Sonic Forces, and Chaos Island from Sonic Frontiers. Wait, actually, we probably shouldn't do Westopolis because we don't need that many city levels. Maybe we could do something like Wait. I missed Space Colony Arc. I said Radical Highway instead of Space Colony Arc. So yeah, you could just keep Westopolis, why not? Westopolis, Sunset Heights, have 2 city levels, what the heck. Okay, then you have the boss fight with Mephiles for the third era. Final boss or final level should not be Radical Highway because we're already doing that. Instead of being Radical Highway, it should be what's it called? The Black Comet from Shadow the Hedgehog. Also, maybe Black Doom could actually do things during the game's story. He mostly just stands around and says how he's gonna take over Shadow's mind, and he's the ultimate warrior, and he's gonna destroy him and all that stuff, but he doesn't actually do anything. Shadow has this mini arc about being overcome with the anger from his Black Arm's DNA, but then Maria just tells him, Shadow, it breaks my heart to see you so full of anger, and then he just instantly snaps out of it. Maybe it could actually build up to that moment. Eh. Also, could we maybe have some more, those parts where you talk to the characters in the open world? Maybe you could have those voice acted like the ones in Frontiers. Would have been nice to hear some actual lines from Omega. Why didn't they have him, joining Shadow and Rouge at the end of the game? You could say, well, he's not in Sonic Generations. We'll just put him in there. I mean, this game, the remaster of Sonic Generations already changed some stuff. I don't think anyone would be mad to have Omega be included at the end. Okay, so this video probably went for way longer than I thought it would, but nevertheless, I still enjoyed making this, so hope you all enjoy. That's all for now. Remember to stay way past cool.